I was always told I wasn't enough because I didn't marry the right person. But when my sister called me a failure in front of the whole family, I decided it was time to show her who the real failure was. What I did next left her in complete shock and made her apologize for her judgment. I'm Chloe, and my story starts in a place I never imagined I'd find myself, in the middle of a family dinner, surrounded by people I loved, when suddenly everything came to a screeching halt. It was a typical Sunday evening. My family had gathered at my parents' house for dinner, a weekly tradition we'd kept for years. Everyone was there: my mom and dad, my younger brother, and of course my older sister, Emily. Growing up, Emily had always been the one everyone looked up to. She was the picture of success. Married young, with 2 kids, a well-paying job, and a seemingly perfect life. I, on the other hand, had never followed the same path. I wasn't married, didn't have kids, and my career was still in the process of blooming. But I was content. I was happy with where I was in life, or at least I thought I was. But that evening, everything changed in the blink of an eye. The conversation started innocently enough. We were talking about the usual family gossip: how so-and-so had just had a baby, who had bought a new house, the latest updates on my cousin's wedding plans. It was all light and easy, until Emily decided it was time to steer the conversation in a different direction. "So, Chloe," she began, her voice sweet but laced with something I couldn't quite pinpoint. "How's your love life going? Still seeing that guy? What was his name again? David?" I froze for a second. David and I had been dating for about 6 months, and although things were going well, we had decided to take it slow. I knew Emily didn't really approve of him, not because he was a bad person, but because he wasn't exactly the type she had imagined for me. He was a bit older than me, not as established in his career as she would have liked, and she never fully understood our dynamic, but I didn't think she would make it the topic of the entire dinner. I had hoped that she would just let it go, but instead she pressed on. "David's a nice guy," she continued, "but I think you could do better, Chloe. You're getting older and you're still not married. I mean, it's time to start thinking seriously about your future. You're not getting any younger, you know." There it was, the first jab. I could feel my face heat up, but I tried to keep it together. Everyone at the table was looking at me now, waiting for my response. I smiled tightly, trying to deflect. "I'm not in a rush, Em," I replied, keeping my tone light. "I'm happy with where I am right now. Marriage and kids are not on my timeline, and I'm okay with that." But Emily wasn't done. If anything, her words were just getting sharper. "Well, Chloe, you say that now, but I think deep down you know you've made some mistakes," she said, her voice rising slightly. "You keep settling for these guys who don't really match up, and it's like you're afraid of what might happen if you actually committed to someone who could offer you more. It's like you're scared of finding the right person." I felt my stomach drop. The tone of her voice was different now, critical, judgmental. The room fell silent. My heart was racing, and I couldn't tell if it was the heat of anger or the sting of humiliation that was clouding my thoughts. "Emily," I began, trying to keep my voice calm. "That's not fair. You don't know anything about what I'm looking for in a relationship. I'm not settling for anything. I just don't think I need to follow the same path you did." "Oh, please," she interrupted, her voice cutting through the air. "You're still single because you're too picky. You always have been. I hate to say it, but you're making a huge mistake. You're not getting any younger, Chloe. It's time to face the reality that you might be alone forever if you keep turning away the people who actually want something serious." Her words hit harder than I expected. I couldn't breathe for a moment, the weight of her judgment crashing down on me. The room felt smaller. The looks on my parents' faces were unreadable, but I could tell they were uncomfortable. The silence that followed her words was deafening. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but something inside me snapped. I had been quiet for too long, allowing Emily to criticize my life, my choices, my relationships. I had been the one who kept the peace, who let her think her way was the only way, but I was done. "Wow, Emily," I said, my voice trembling slightly with the mix of hurt and anger. "I had no idea you felt that way about me, but let me tell you something. Just because I'm not following your timeline doesn't mean I'm a failure. I'm not you. I don't need to be married with kids to feel like I'm successful." She blinked, surprised by my response, but I wasn't finished. You don't get to decide what my life should look like, Emily. You don't get to label me as a failure just because I'm not on the same track as you. I'm happy with where I am, and I'm proud of the choices I've made. There was a pause, and I could see the shock on her face, but I wasn't going to back down. I had been silent for too long, and it was time to make my voice heard. Maybe it's time you stop thinking your way is the only right way, I said, my words firm and clear. Maybe you should start respecting the fact that I'm living my life the way I choose, not how you think I should. The room was quiet for a long moment. I could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on me, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to let Emily's judgment define me. I wasn't going to let her shame me for living my truth. I had spent too long trying to please everyone else, and I was done. What happened next would leave Emily in complete shock and would make her regret her words for the rest of her life. The silence after I spoke felt suffocating. No one at the table knew what to say, and for a moment, it seemed like time had stopped. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, and the heat of frustration simmered just beneath the surface. I was waiting for Emily's response, the one I knew was coming, but what I didn't expect was for her to remain silent. Instead, she sat there, her mouth slightly open as if she hadn't processed what I just said. She glanced around the table looking for someone, anyone, to back her up. But the table was eerily still. My parents didn't say a word. My brother, who usually took the opportunity to interject in family debates, seemed to shrink back, sensing that this wasn't a conversation he wanted to be part of. "Chloe," Emily finally said, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to help." "Help?" I repeated, my voice steady, but the anger was bubbling up. "By telling me that I'm a failure? That I'm too picky and wasting my life away? That's not help, Emily, that's judgment, and I've had enough of it." Her eyes widened as she saw the sincerity in my anger. I don't think she expected me to stand up for myself the way I did. For years, I had swallowed my discomfort, let her criticisms slide off me, brushed off the hurtful comments. I had always tried to keep the peace, to keep the family harmony intact. But not anymore. I was no longer going to let her or anyone else dictate my worth based on their limited understanding of what happiness and success look like. Emily shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly regretting how the conversation had turned. I I didn't mean to make you feel like this," she said quietly. You didn't mean to make me feel like this?" "Well, you did," I snapped, "and I'm not going to sit here and let you disrespect me again, especially not in front of everyone." Her face flushed a deep red. For the first time, I saw a crack in the confidence she had always exuded. Emily had never been the one to apologize. Not to me. She was the older sibling, the successful one, the one who everyone looked up to. And now, here I was, calling her out in front of the entire family, forcing her to acknowledge the hurt she had caused. For a brief moment, Emily opened her mouth as though to say something, but she hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, and I knew she was searching for an excuse, for something to say that would make the situation better. But there was nothing she could say that would take back the hurtful words. "I'm not saying marriage and kids are bad," I continued, trying to keep my voice calm, though it was hard. "I'm just saying that it's not the only way to live. You've built your life in a way that works for you, and that's fine, but that doesn't mean I have to follow the same path. I'm happy with the way things are in my life right now, and I don't need your approval." I could see my mom shifting uncomfortably in her seat, clearly feeling the tension. My dad, who rarely intervened in our arguments, looked down at his plate, avoiding eye contact. But my brother, who had been quietly watching the exchange, looked up and met my eyes. His expression was one of surprise, but there was something else there too. A glimmer of respect, perhaps. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice much softer now, almost apologetic. "I didn't mean to make you feel like you weren't enough, Chloe. I, I just thought you might be missing out. I'm sorry for that. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you." I paused, letting her words settle in. I could see the regret in her eyes, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook too easily. This wasn't just about her apology. It was about her understanding that the way she had treated me for all these years wasn't okay. "Thank you for apologizing," I said, my tone still firm but more measured. But it's not just about the words. It's about understanding that my life is my own, and I don't need to justify it to anyone. Not to you, not to anyone. There was a long pause as Emily absorbed what I had said. I could tell that the words had hit her harder than she had expected. The thing was, Emily had always been the successful one, the one who had everything together: marriage, kids, a stable life. She had never understood why I wasn't in the same place. But now she was beginning to realize that my life wasn't something to be judged, something to be measured by her standards. I I really didn't mean to make you feel like you were failing, Chloe, she said again, her voice more genuine now. I just wanted the best for you, but I see now that I've been trying to force my own expectations onto you. I'm sorry. Her apology was sincere, and for the first time in a long time, I could see a shift in her. It wasn't just the words she was saying, it was the understanding behind them. She was finally seeing me as an individual, not as a reflection of her own ideals. Thanks, Emily, I said, the tension in my chest beginning to lift. I know you were coming from a good place, but I need you to understand that I don't need to follow the same path you did to be happy. I'm happy with the life I've built, and I want you to respect that. She nodded, her expression softening. I do. I really do. I didn't get it before. But I do now. There was still some tension in the air, but it was different now. It wasn't the same sharp judgment that had been there before. It was a recognition of our differences and a willingness to accept that we didn't have to be the same to love each other. I didn't expect an overnight change in Emily or in our relationship, but this conversation had marked the beginning of something different. It wasn't just about the apology, it was about her understanding that I was not a failure for not following the path she had walked. I was just as worthy of respect for living life on my own terms. The rest of the dinner went by quietly, but there was an unspoken shift between Emily and me. We didn't need to say anything more. She had apologized, and I had accepted it. And more importantly, I had finally made her see that my life, my choices were valid, even if they didn't look the way she thought they should. The real shock, though, was yet to come. The days after the dinner were quiet, but I could feel the shift. It wasn't just Emily who was affected by our conversation, it was the entire family. I began to notice subtle changes in the way people spoke to me, the way they interacted with me. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't being judged or looked at with pity for not being married or having kids. It was a small but powerful change. Emily, of course, continued to try and make up for her harsh words. She'd send me texts, checking in, making small gestures, asking if I wanted to grab coffee, offering to help with something I hadn't even asked about. It was clear she wanted to make things right, and part of me appreciated that. But part of me also wanted her to understand that it wasn't just about her apology, it was about her changing her perception of me and respecting my choices moving forward. But the real shock came a few weeks later. I was at work when I received an unexpected call from my mom. "Chloe," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You need to come over. It's about Emily." I felt my heart race. "What happened? Is she okay?" "I don't know," my mom replied, her voice shaky. "But I think she needs you." I didn't ask any more questions. I grabbed my things, told my boss I had to leave, and made my way to my parents' house. When I arrived, my mom met me at the door, her face pale. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "Just come inside," she said softly, leading me into the living room. There, sitting on the couch, was Emily. Her face was red, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked up when I entered, her gaze filled with guilt and shame. I could tell something was wrong, but I had no idea what had happened. "Emily?" I asked gently, walking over to her. "What's going on?" She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but her voice trembled. "Chloe, I've been thinking about everything you said, about how I've been judging your life, and I realize how wrong I was. I really hurt you, and I've been trying to figure out how to make up for it." It's okay. I told you that I appreciated your apology," I said, sitting down beside her. "I didn't expect you to change overnight." But Emily shook her head. "No, it's not just that," she said, her voice breaking. It's that I've been living my life based on what I thought was expected of me. I've been trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, but it's been suffocating me. I've been miserable, and I never even realized how much I was projecting that onto you. I pushed you so hard to follow the same path because I thought it was the only way to be happy. But I see now that I was just trying to live up to everyone else's standards. I've been living for everyone else, Chloe. I stared at her, stunned. This wasn't what I had expected. I had thought this conversation had been about me, about her apologizing for how she treated me. But now it was clear. This was more than just an apology. It was a confession. I don't know what to do. Emily continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been so focused on having the perfect family, having the perfect life, but I've been ignoring what I actually want. I've been so unhappy, Chloe, and I've been so selfish. I've been dragging my family along with me, pretending everything's fine. And it's not. My heart sank. Emily was the last person I ever imagined would feel this way. She had always been the picture of having it all, and now here she was, admitting that her life wasn't as perfect as she had made it seem, that her pursuit of this ideal life had come at a personal cost. Emily, you don't have to live for anyone else. Not for me, not for anyone, I said softly, my anger from earlier melting into something deeper. Compassion, understanding. We all have different definitions of happiness, and it's okay to realize that the life you thought you wanted isn't the life that makes you happy. It's okay to change course. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I know, but I'm scared, Chloe. I'm scared of disappointing everyone. I'm scared of making the wrong choice, of letting everyone down. You're not going to disappoint anyone by living for yourself, I said, my voice firm but filled with care. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your happiness, but you owe it to yourself to find it. And I'm here for you, no matter what you choose. The room was silent for a long moment. Emily's sobs were quiet but heavy. I could feel the weight of everything she had been carrying. For the first time, I saw her not as the perfect older sister, but as a woman who was struggling, just like anyone else. And in that moment, I knew that my decision to stand up for myself, to refuse to let Emily define my life, had given her the space to face her own struggles. She had finally realized that she didn't need to follow anyone else's path to be happy. After what felt like an eternity, Emily wiped her tears and looked at me with a new kind of resolve. Chloe, I'm sorry. I've been so wrong. Not just about you, but about myself. I've spent my whole life trying to be perfect, but I've been so unhappy. I don't want to live like that anymore. And I'm sorry for making you feel like you weren't enough. I nodded, my heart swelling. Emily, I don't need you to apologize anymore. I just want you to be happy, to be true to yourself. That's all I've ever wanted for you. She smiled through her tears, and for the first time in a long while, I saw my sister as someone who wasn't trying to be perfect, but simply someone who was trying to find her own way. It wasn't going to be easy for her, but this was the start of something new. A fresh chapter in her life, one where she didn't have to live up to anyone else's expectations, and where she could finally start living for herself. Thank you, Chloe, she whispered, for showing me what really matters. And in that moment, I realized that this journey we were both on, of standing up for ourselves, of accepting our own paths, had just begun. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about both of us learning how to live authentically. And it had changed everything. After that night, Emily's transformation didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't always smooth sailing. But for the first time, I could see that she was truly trying to break free from the mold she had been trapped in for so long. It wasn't easy for her to accept that she could live her life on her own terms without constantly seeking validation from others. She had spent so much of her life trying to live up to an ideal that was never really hers in the first place. But she had taken the first step. Weeks went by, and Emily began making small but significant changes. She started speaking up more, expressing her opinions without fear of judgment. She started taking weekends for herself, time to read, go on walks, or even just relax at home. She told me one evening that she had finally started seeing a therapist, something she had been considering for a long time but had never felt allowed to do because of the pressure to always seem strong and in control. I was proud of her. I could see that she was beginning to unlearn the habits that had held her back for so long. The Emily I had known for years, the one who wore the crown of having it all, was slowly being replaced by someone who wasn't afraid to admit her struggles, her fears, and her desires. And for the first time, she seemed truly free. One afternoon, Emily invited me over to her house for a quiet visit. The kids were with her in-laws, and it was just the two of us. I walked into her living room, expecting the usual hurried, let's catch up for 5 minutes and then go on with life. But this time, she had something different planned. She sat me down on the couch and handed me a cup of tea. Her eyes were bright with something new, something she hadn't had before. "Chloe," she began, her voice steady. "I need to tell you something. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we both spend so much time living for other people's expectations, and I've realized something. I've spent my whole life trying to be the perfect version of myself, the one everyone thinks I should be, but I've never asked myself what I really want. I've been doing what everyone else expected: marriage, kids, career, but none of that has ever been the full picture of who I am. I've been afraid to admit that to myself and to you." I felt a rush of emotion. There it was, the apology I hadn't even known I needed to hear. I had always assumed that Emily's life was perfect, that her happiness came from following the right steps. But here she was, admitting that she, too, had been playing a part. She wasn't perfect, and for once, she wasn't trying to be. "I'm not saying I regret having kids or being married," Emily continued, her eyes focused on me. "But I've realized that I lost myself in it. I stopped thinking about my own needs, my own happiness. I didn't even realize it until you called me out on it, Chloe. I've been living my life for everyone else and not for me. And I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you weren't enough. You were right all along. You've been living authentically, and I've been hiding behind this perfect image." I took a deep breath, processing the weight of her words. This was the apology I hadn't known I needed, and yet, here it was. Emily had admitted something huge, not just to me, but to herself. She was taking ownership of her choices, and I couldn't have been prouder of her for that. "You don't need to apologize, Em," I said softly. "You're here now. That's what matters. I'm just glad you're finally doing things for you, and I'm so proud of you for realizing that. We don't have to live by anyone else's standards. Not you, not me. We can both live life the way we want." She smiled, her eyes a little misty. "I've spent so many years thinking I had to live up to this perfect picture, but I don't. I can create my own picture, and it doesn't need to fit anyone else's idea of what success is." That was the moment I knew Emily had truly begun her transformation. It wasn't just about admitting she had been wrong in how she treated me. It was about realizing that the expectations of others were not the road to her own happiness. She was finally taking the reins of her life, just as I had taken mine. And that was worth more than any apology. From then on, things between Emily and me shifted even more. We were no longer the sisters who lived in the shadow of each other's successes. We were equals. We supported each other's journeys without judgment, without comparison. We celebrated our differences, her journey as a mother and wife, and mine as a single independent woman, and realized that there was no one right way to live. As time passed, Emily made more changes. She started volunteering at a local shelter, something she had always wanted to do but had never made time for. She took up photography as a hobby, something that had always intrigued her, but that she had never pursued because she thought she didn't have time. And most importantly, she started having honest conversations with her husband about her own needs, her own desires, and the future she wanted to create. Not just as his wife and the mother of their children, but as an individual. It was clear to me that Emily had begun to live for herself, and the peace she found in that was more beautiful than I had ever imagined. It wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but for the first time, I felt like she was truly living authentically. And so was I. We had both learned something crucial: that living for others' expectations, no matter how well-intentioned, would only lead to resentment and frustration. The key to true happiness wasn't fitting into someone else's mold. It was about being true to yourself, accepting your own choices, and embracing your own path, no matter how unconventional it might be. In the end, that lesson, one I had fought so hard to teach Emily, had made both of us stronger. And our relationship, once fraught with judgment and comparison, was now rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and a shared desire to live life on our own terms. And that, I realized, was the most powerful thing either of us could have ever learned. As the months passed, Emily and I both felt the weight of the change in our relationship. We no longer felt the need to prove ourselves to anyone, not even to each other. Our bond, once built on comparison and hidden resentment, had transformed into one based on mutual respect and understanding. The judgments had faded, replaced by honest conversations and a shared sense of freedom. But the real turning point came when Emily decided to take a leap of faith in a way that no one, including herself, expected. It was a rainy afternoon when she called me, sounding more excited than I had heard her in years. "Chloe, you're not going to believe this," she said, breathless. "I'm quitting my job." I could hear the smile in her voice, but I didn't quite understand. "What do you mean, you're quitting your job? Why?" "I've been thinking about it for weeks," she replied, "but I'm finally ready to do it. I'm taking a sabbatical. I've saved up enough, and I think it's time for me to figure out what I really want. Not just for the family, not just for the kids, but for me. I've been working at that corporate job for years, and I've been miserable, Chloe. I've been running on autopilot, doing what was expected of me. But I'm done." My heart raced with excitement for her and a little bit of fear for the bold decision she was about to make. "Emily, that's huge. Are you sure? I mean, you've always been the one with the stable job, the one everyone relied on." "I know. I've always been the dependable one, the one who doesn't take risks. But I don't want to live the rest of my life checking boxes just because I think I'm supposed to. I want to do something that excites me, something I'm passionate about." The determination in her voice was unmistakable. I had never imagined that Emily, the person who always played by the rules, would make such a bold move. And yet, here she was, ready to break free from the life she had built and chase something that would truly make her happy. Over the next few weeks, Emily took steps to turn her plan into reality. She started researching new careers, exploring interests she had pushed aside for years, and considering what kind of work would make her feel fulfilled. She even signed up for a course on graphic design, something she had always been interested in, but had never pursued because she didn't think she had the time. There were moments of doubt, of course. Emily would call me in tears some days, overwhelmed by the uncertainty of her decision. "What if I regret it?" she would ask. "What if I fail? I've always had a steady paycheck, a solid career, and now I'm walking away from it all." I would reassure her, reminding her that this was her journey to take. "You're not failing, Em. You're evolving. And if you don't take this chance now, you might regret it later. You're doing this for you, and that's the most important thing." Her journey wasn't without challenges. There were moments of frustration when she felt like giving up or falling back into the comfort of her old life, but she didn't. Emily stuck with it, carving out a new path for herself, one that was uniquely hers. Slowly, the confidence that had always been buried under layers of expectation began to shine through. She had stepped into a life that wasn't dictated by anyone else's standards, and for the first time, I could see her truly happy. One evening, months later, we sat together in her kitchen, the two of us sipping tea and talking about everything and nothing. Emily looked different. There was a lightness in her demeanor that hadn't been there before. "You were right, Chloe," she said, smiling at me. "I didn't know what I was missing until I started living for myself. It's not easy, and there are days when I'm scared, but I'm finally doing something I love. I'm happier than I've been in years." I felt a lump form in my throat as I listened to her. This was the Emily I had always hoped she would become, the woman who had found the courage to break free from the expectations of others and live authentically. And I knew, without a doubt, that it was the courage I had found within myself that had helped her take the first step. "I'm so proud of you," I said quietly. "You've done the hard part. Now you get to live life on your own terms just like you deserve." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "And I couldn't have done it without you. You were the one who showed me it was okay to be myself. You gave me the courage to stop hiding behind a life that wasn't really mine." As I sat there holding her hand, I realized that the ripple effect of standing up for myself hadn't just changed my life, it had changed Emily's life too. By setting boundaries, by refusing to let anyone, including her, dictate my happiness, I had given Emily the space to do the same. We had both learned that living authentically didn't just make us stronger, it made us freer, more confident, and more willing to embrace the unknown. And that was the greatest lesson of all, that the best thing we could ever do for ourselves was to stop living for others and start living for us. The road ahead was uncertain, yes, but for both Emily and me, it was a road we were walking with purpose, with conviction, and with a newfound sense of pride. We were no longer defined by what others thought we should be. We were finally free to define ourselves. And that, I realized, was the most powerful gift we could ever give each other and ourselves. Months passed, and both Emily and I continued to navigate our individual journeys, but the one thing that remained constant was the newfound bond between us. It was no longer about competing or comparing, but about supporting each other in our own unique lives. The shift wasn't just in the way we viewed each other, it was in the way we viewed ourselves. We had both realized that we weren't failures for not fitting the conventional mold. We were simply living the best way we knew how, and that was more than enough. One spring afternoon, Emily called me again. This time her voice was different, softer, more certain. She had officially launched her freelance design business, and she was thriving. She wasn't just surviving. She was finally doing what she loved, and it was paying off in more ways than one. "I did it, Chloe," she said, excitement evident in her voice. "I'm finally doing this full time. I've had clients, I've been booked for months, and I feel more fulfilled than I've ever felt in my entire life." A smile spread across my face. "I knew you could do it, Em. I'm so proud of you. You've worked so hard and it's paying off. You took the risk. You took control of your happiness." She paused for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was filled with emotion. "Chloe, I don't think I've ever really thanked you for all of this, for standing up for yourself, for pushing me to look beyond the surface. You've shown me that it's okay to not follow the traditional path. That being myself is enough. You were the catalyst for all of this change in my life." My heart swelled as I listened to her. "You don't need to thank me, Em. I only showed you what was already inside of you. You had the courage all along. I just helped you see it." The moment felt like a culmination of everything we had gone through. The awkward family dinners, the judgment, the painful confrontations, all of it had led us to this point, where we could finally appreciate each other for who we were, not who we thought we should be. It wasn't just about Emily finding her passion or me living life on my own terms. It was about us understanding that we didn't need anyone else's approval to be happy. As the months turned into a year, Emily and I continued to grow. She hired a small team to help with her design work, and she even began mentoring young women who were interested in graphic design, sharing her journey with them. She had become not only a successful businesswoman, but also a role model for others who had struggled with the same pressures she once did. As for me, I continued to focus on my career and my own growth. I was content in my independence and proud of the life I had built. I traveled more, spent time with friends who encouraged my passions, and pursued new opportunities that challenged me. But perhaps most importantly, I learned how to prioritize my own happiness, without apology. One evening, while we were having dinner at my apartment, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she began, "when we were growing up, I always thought I had it all figured out. But looking back, I see now that I was just following a script. I was afraid to step off the path because I didn't want to disappoint anyone. But now I realize that the only person I need to answer to is myself." I nodded, sipping my wine. Exactly. I think for so long, we both thought that success was one thing: marriage, kids, a stable job. But true success, true happiness, comes from living life on your own terms. We've both learned that. She smiled, her eyes softening. "Yeah, and I think that's what makes us both successful. Finding our own paths. And I think our relationship is better for it too. We've been through so much, but now I see how much we've grown." "I agree," I said, smiling back at her. "We've both come a long way, and we're finally starting to live life for ourselves, not for anyone else." The conversation shifted to lighter topics as we continued our meal, but I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. I had started this journey questioning my worth because I didn't fit into the mold others had created for me. I had allowed Emily's judgment and the expectations of our family to weigh me down. But now, here we were, stronger, more independent, and finally free from the shackles of comparison. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been pain, awkward confrontations, moments of doubt, but in the end, it was all worth it. Emily had found her voice, and I had found mine. We had both learned that it was okay to be different, that it was okay to not follow the same path as everyone else. Our lives didn't need to look like anyone else's to be meaningful. As the evening came to an end, I hugged Emily tightly before she left, both of us feeling the weight of our shared growth and the deep connection we had fostered. "Thank you, Chloe," she whispered, "for being the sister who showed me the way. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of where we've both ended up." I smiled, pulling away and looking into her eyes. "I'm proud of us, too. We've both come so far, and I know that no matter what happens, we'll always have each other's backs." And as she walked out the door, I realized that everything we had been through, the judgment, the confrontation, the growth, had led us here, to a place where we could stand side by side as equals, as women who had found their own paths to happiness. We weren't perfect, our lives weren't perfect, but they were ours, and they were enough, and that, I realized, was all we ever needed to be.